Today is a very special episode of Part the System as it's our 20th. And for such an occasion, I've got a great guest, which is Dr. Bunde-Birouste. Now, Anne is the founding director of Football United and director of the Creating Chances social enterprise, which she co-founded. She's an elected member of Street Football World International for Good Network, and in recognition of her significant roles in academia and sport for good, Anne has received a number of awards, including the prestigious Australian Financial Review category award winner for arts, culture and sport in 2018. And in the same capacity, Anne was in 2016 New South Wales state finalist for the Australian of the Year, which is absolutely incredible. Anne is a member of the academic board at the Australian College of Physical Education, ACPE, and an adjunct senior lecturer at the University of New South Wales, as well as a professor of leadership at the International Football Business Academy. I don't know where you get all this time from, Anne. Anne is recognised locally and internationally as an intensively inspiring individual, which I've seen firsthand, and a champion for youth empowerment. An excellent visual representation of Anne's engagement is promoting positive social change and youth development, and this can be seen in the award-winning documentary Passport to Hope, which I'll drop into the feed when we put this live. So, Anne, really excited to speak to you this morning. How are you?
Hi, David. Good. You made me just tired with all of that. I didn't know you'd read it all. I'm great. I'm absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
That's
and thank you for having me. I didn't realize it was the 20th episode. That's awesome.
Yes, it is. It's come around quick. So, well, thank you for giving me some time. And we'll jump straight in, Dr. Anne. What does well-being mean to you?
I did think about this long and hard since I got your questions. It's hard to put in a short piece of conversation, but I think one could sum it up as feeling really good. To me, well-being is a whole mix of physical and emotional or spiritual, not in the religious sense, but in the feeling sense. And I think the feeling of feeling good and happy and positive within oneself and within one's life situation, to me, that's the top. That's the ultimate of well-being. To be honest, I think obviously physically, if you're in good physical health, it's great. If you're not, it's a drag. You're challenged often. But I think to meet any challenge, if you're not well in your head, if you would, in your mind, any other challenge is even multiplied. And on the contrary, if you are well in your mind, you can meet any challenge, and you can also give, which is part of my mantra, which is, and it's proven that if you give of yourself and of your person, of your time or whatever, you feel better. And it's so true. So I think it's mostly the mental, emotional, above everything.
Yeah. So for you, it's definitely how you feel about yourself and being comfortable in who you are. But that contribution bit for you is huge, isn't it? You've definitely tagged yourself onto some really big causes, which obviously you're trying to support and for sport for good.
Well, it's way more than sport for good, which is something we can talk about if you want. I'll tell you something. When I was a young girl, I had a very challenging father. He could be the best of times and the worst of times, but he was very generous and very caring, but he could also whip out a temper. Yeah. And I remember when I was maybe 12, I thought to myself, I felt myself reacting a bit strongly. And I remember thinking, I don't want to ever be that person that my father is in that sense. And I started working on my emotional presence and mindfulness, I guess. Yeah. And at the same time, the Vietnam War was raging, racism was raging in the States, and I was very impressionable, and I was reading books in history class, and I just thought, how can we be in a world where, how can people wake up in the morning and do horrific things, and how can people's shoot guns at each other and slaughter, and how can a human being make others miserable or hurt or whatever? And I just thought, this can't be a world we can accept. And so I just felt past my life trying to figure out how to work against those kinds of things. So causes, I just think that, and I've had the luck to be so happy, I feel like I'm going to burst millions of times in my life, really millions. Yeah, wow. And I remember thinking, every time that feeling hits me, if only everybody in the world could feel like this. And it sounds very, lovey-dovey or whatever, but it's really, really true. It's a visceral thing for me. And I can't just sit back and earn money or whatever. I have to be doing something to change things I don't see right around me. And so, in answer to your health and well-being, for me, that's part of it. Everybody in this world deserves to feel happy and to be well.
Yeah, I hear you, and I agree with what you're saying in terms of helping those who need it most, and you talk about altruism, and sometimes it can be selfish in a way because it makes you feel good when you're giving to others, right?
Yeah.
But if people could feel and bottle that feeling that you're talking about, when you've been feeling so good, and I suppose you've been very, very lucky, because a lot of people don't get to feel that, and it's when we're talking about well-being, it's obviously...
And so this is why I love working with youth, because I think there's not a person among us that can't sit back and remember childhood and kids that got bullied, or maybe we were bullied or whatever, and that absolutely horrific feeling of what that is like. And I think well-being starts way in teeny weeny times and moves across the lifespan. And for me, finding programs that can work with young people to help them find that space within themselves and that belief in themselves and that belief that life can be good. And then they go on and hopefully engage in some way across their life. So that's one of the reasons I really love to focus on young people.
Well, that's that beautiful segue into telling me a little bit more about Football United and where they are, where you see them in the health and wellness system.
So just a tiny bit of background. I'll try to be short. I'm very loquacious, so pardon me. So Football United was born out of a number of, I call them eureka moments. The first one being when I witnessed the French World Cup team win the World Cup against all odds and against a very unbelieving public in France in 98.
And seriously, 1998, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I remember it clearly.
And the team was very multicultural, and at that time, France had big racism issues. They have had lots, but anyway. And against all odds, the press and everybody didn't believe in their own team, which I found absolutely extraordinary. But they came through, and they showed everyone, and they had the most glorious victory. And
so just at that time, Anne, was the media discourse just slating the national team and
completely.
The fact it wasn't
the national team, the coach, and we all know how media can be terrible.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember, so my husband's French, and I remember saying to him, what's going on? This is our team, our World Cup. Why aren't we rallying, rah, rah, America? That's how they do it there. And I didn't understand. And he laughed at me and he said, that just shows you haven't lived here long enough. The French want to be able to say that if we don't win, we told you so. Which is just the worst attitude in the world, right? I mean, come on, if you're not going to believe in yourselves. Anyway, as soon as that whistle blew, the entire country everywhere erupted. We were home watching it on this tiny little TV, horns and people spilling out into the street. The entire country just went bananas.
Yeah.
And the next day I took my son, who was 3, and we went down to the Champs-Elysees, and for the victory parade, I didn't know what was going to hit me. And we got there early, and the Champs-Elysees kept filling up and filling up and filling up. And there were millions of people. I think the count was like 3 million. You couldn't even move. And the diversity in the crowd was just extraordinary. Every age, every color, every whatever. And I remember we wanted to kind of get close to the victory bus, but my little boy was so tiny, and all of a sudden some bloke leans over, picks up my son and puts him on his shoulder so he could see the victory bus.
Yeah, wow.
It just was amazing. And that stuck with me. And I didn't get to play football when I was a kid because we didn't really have it in America where I grew up. It wasn't a gender thing. When I was growing up, we had a lot of gender equality where I lived, and girls could do anything they wanted if they put their mind to, and they were supported. But it was a sport thing. We had gridiron and basketball and track and field and everything except soccer where I grew up. I fell in love with the game in Africa, and I fell in love with it again in '98. But I had a growing family. I couldn't play, but the power stayed with me. And then fast forward to 2004, when I was working at the University of New South Wales in a health and conflict program, rebuilding health systems in conflict-impacted countries. And the university said, you've got to do a PhD if you want to keep your job. And I said, oh my God, I don't like academia. I'm just here by fluke. That
makes me laugh.
Become a academician. But I was really worried that I would never be able to make it. And I had just moved my entire family, 4 children, a dog and a husband, from Paris to Australia. And I couldn't be without a job. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to do this, I have to do something I'm passionate about. And working in conflict-impacted situations opened my eyes to the plight of refugees and the mere existence. I think most people just hear the word refugee and they go, oh yeah, so sad.
Yeah.
But I saw camps, and I saw camps that were existing for decades. And anyway, and also at that time in Australia, in Sydney, we were having a lot of problem with children in Villawood, and we still do. It was not a pretty time. And I thought, hey, maybe we can harness this love of this game that people share across the world. And it's the world game after all, and welcome refugee youth and their families through a football program or through the football system. And in fact, that's my whole PhD, is how the disconnect between my idea and the reality on the ground, starting with football, who now is different than back then. But back then, they didn't want to hear about anything except organized football, pay your fees, conform to the system, and anybody can do it. Well, that was about as far from the truth as possible. So a bunch of trial and error, we started offering football opportunities for refugee kids and drop-in programs. And then I was approached by somebody at school who was talking about racial bullying within school with intensive English centers. I said, well, let's try a football program. And that became Football United. And that school, Miller Technology, is still running football programs today after all these years. But we learned that it wasn't just the refugee kids that couldn't join in organized football. It was many youth who came from vulnerable and disadvantaged backgrounds. So what started out with the refugee support football program, or support program through football, became just a program for young people to access the game they loved. But very early on, we built in mechanisms to help train our kids up so that they could come on board and help run programs. And then we started looking at what we could do more beyond football. So we started integrating life skills, positive life skills. And one of the greatest things that came out of Football United for me is a huge program in the country of Myanmar, because one of my colleagues and lifelong friend heard about an opportunity at the University of New South Wales for some international funding for Myanmar. And until just recently, we were running programs in 65 different countries.
Wow.
We're football for peace, football for social inclusion, football for risk disaster reduction. And now my current most pressing issue of the day is to try to find a way to support the extraordinary country of Myanmar. And we're running a football festival in support of the country on the 3rd of April. You can give a little plug if you want or show the flyer. And I'm proud to say Collective Leisure is one of our partners. Anyway, bringing people together around a cause they're passionate about or a thing they're passionate about, whether it's music, football, what, is a great way to join energies, build capacity, make opportunities happen. And that's what we do for Football United. Create chances.
And why do you think football and sport is so important in reducing those barriers for marginalized communities?
Well, it's not only important for reducing those barriers, but back to your original question about wellness. First of all, there's the physical thing of when you're doing a sport, when you're doing a physical activity, you get the endorphins and you feel good. Football is the really only global sport across the entire world. I mean, Craig Foster said at one time when he was doing an analysis, the World Cup football brings in more revenue than any Olympics, for example. So, and I'm not meaning to speak money here, but enthusiasm-wise, wherever you go, and I've traveled the world, you are always going to see kids kicking a ball around or kicking a sock around or whatever. It's the only truly global sport, and therefore it reaches across ethnic, cultural, whatever boundaries. And I'm telling you, we've seen people come together from those extraordinary walks of life on a football field. When they come together as a team to play, they're just one. And that's really, really magical. So it provides an opening, it provides a vehicle for people to come together around something they're passionate about in a positive sense, because passion can be negative too, you know? And from there, you just, you orchestrate it. And I have to say, the football we run is called Fair Play Football. So we focus on the positives, on the teamwork, on the communication, on the winning's not everything. And sometimes it's hard for kids, especially. Well, it's harder actually for adults, frankly. The competition, we try to manage the competition. Competition is not always bad, but if it spills over to bad effects, then it is. So yeah.
Oh, well, I'm really looking forward to the Myanmar Football for Peace Festival. I think it's going to be a great event. Is it the 3rd of April? Is that?
3rd of April from 12 to 6.
Yes. So,
at the Blacktown, at the Western Sydney Waters practice grounds in Blacktown.
Yeah. So all genders, ages. Yeah, it's gonna be a fantastic event. So really,
we want it to be a community coming together in support of the country. And I want to just say one thing. This is not a political manifestation. This is a humanitarian manifestation where people coming together to support the people of that country. That needs to be said, because we've had some sort of querying about why should Football United get involved in politics. We're not. We're supporting a people who we love and who we work with and who are part of Football United.
Absolutely. You're just bringing a bit of awareness to it, aren't you? So, and with, you're well connected, obviously, internationally as well. Can you share how football and sport and some of the programs are having a growing place internationally?
Well, in street football world alone, which is a network of organizations like Football United across the world, there's 135 or 40 organizations worldwide, and they are making impacts in poverty. They are promoting health. Two of the big health promotion foci are AIDS awareness and prevention, and water and sanitation, believe it or not. It's mind-blowing that in this day and age, in 2021, there are still countries, many across this world, where people don't have clean water. And clean hygiene and sanitation. Those are big ones. There's a lot of work on engaging young people either in back to work or finding their way in the workforce. Football for Peace is huge. There are programs in Palestine and Israel. We've got programs. There's mind awareness programs in Iraq, in Cambodia, Football for Peace across Latin America and Africa. So basically, and I would say all of them have a holistic point to them. So all of them have this holistic well-being of individual and society as a core, and then tack on specific topics. Gender equality and gender awareness is another big one, and racial violence and social inclusion as well. So just again, because it's the passion that brings people together and enables you to approach all sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm a little bit biased because, you know, football's my sport. and as you know, I lived in Germany when I was younger, and, you know, the one thing that connected me with the other kids who, you know, spoke a different language was football. So I've had that lived experience, and then, you know, knowing how powerful it can be to help communities and stuff. I think it can be really used to make an even bigger impact than it's actually making. But we need.
And you know, anybody can play, and you don't need a lot, and that's another thing.
Yeah.
Okay, not well, maybe like I'm playing now, but you can have fun even if you're not Sam Kerr or, you know, Alex Frost. You can still enjoy it.
She's doing pretty well, isn't she? Do you see the hat trick? Eh? Yeah.
Well, listen, I think that Australia media needs to get on board with football more. We didn't even see that on prime time.
Yeah, no, you had to look brilliant. At it on YouTube. It was fantastic, wasn't it? So definitely flying the flag for Aussies over there in the UK.
Yeah.
And, you know, 1 in 2 Australians have got a chronic condition, you know, and we don't seem to be improving the health and well-being really of Australians. And, you know, if you could nudge one part of the system, I know it's complex, but what could that be, and to improve, you know, the well-being health of Australians?
Well, I think, and unfortunately, like I said, Australia thinks they do it well, but they don't. I think significant access to a variety of physical activity from the earliest age on up, and paying attention to those moments in the life cycle where people drop off. Puberty for girls especially is one.
Yeah.
They feel uncomfortable in their bodies. They feel awkward, possibly guys too. I mean, there's lots of types of physical activity. We're talking football, but there's dance, there's all sorts of things. But I think also, there's so much we know now specifically that physical activity is key to health and well-being, and it's also key to really going as far as stemming the progression of chronic conditions. You know, Parkinson's, there's massive the research out there, but cancers, you name it. So supporting this field of exercise physiology in a big way. I think that you're a systems person. I'm not as good as you are in the whole systems thing. But it's a systemic and structural thing as well. I mean, and with mental health, let's say mental health is can be a chronic condition. If you do not have the capacity to engage in things that are going to help you, like exercise physiology, like mental health counseling, for example. You know, the government thinks they're doing really good by offering 12 mental health sessions a year to somebody. If you have mental health challenges, you need 12 in a week, maybe, or at least weekly. 12 is not going to take you very far. And you can't drop these kinds of, this kind of care right when it's starting to make an effect. And, you know, how many health funds, never mind the nationally supported Medicaid, do not support exercise physiology. So people are not going to be able to afford it financially. They're not going to get it.
Yeah.
And so those two things, access across the lifespan, and knowing when to engage when people pull back from physical activity and engaging in it. Make it easy, make it accessible, make it affordable, and make the treatment through exercise accessible and affordable. Make it free. I mean, you're talking, if you're going to look at it in a purely economic, and I'm not an economist in any way, shape, or form, but it just seems to me in my little head, the economics make sense. Because if you have a country of people who are well in their minds and their bodies, they're going to be productive and the country is going to benefit. Yeah. So those are the things I think.
I love all of them, and you're right. I think we spend around $460 million on the health system a day. So, if you look at the health burden, and if we can, break down those barriers, like you say, affordability, access, more preventative, it makes sense, stacks up financially, commercially, but obviously there's all the other benefits as well. And I'm really pleased you mentioned mental health, because 20% of Australians in any given year will suffer from a mental illness. So the support that we need to provide in their recovery journey, and this
whole idea of, are you okay? And last year we saw all sorts of flashes on, helplines and things like that. That's excellent. I think we're paying attention, and at this point in the world, it's really, really challenging. I mean, I don't know a soul who hasn't been impacted emotionally and mentally, health-wise, of COVID and things like that. But it's got to be more than just flashing up an ad on TV or a phone number. And one thing we didn't touch on, but you started to, the all abilities. And I know you're a champion in that space. We also know that people with varying conditions can be significant through adapted physical activity as well. Yeah. There's a physical activity possibility for everyone. It's not just the full able-bodied people, and it's not just the things I've seen from your work and from a great friend, Jose Belamigo, through Next Step Foundation, the impact on families in little teeny weeny lives is just extraordinary.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't matter where you're from or who you are, you should be able to have access to physical activity, no matter what ability, age, So in terms of the work that you do, obviously we've talked a lot about it, but where do you see yourself personally in the system, and how do you want to contribute and influence? And I know you've been in academia for quite a long time, and I had to giggle when you said, "Oh, I don't like academia," but you've been in it for such a long time. I don't know if it's about 18 years or something like that. But yeah, where do you see yourself, Dr. Anne?
Well, let me just say, I got into academia as a fluke, because I met this extraordinary professor who was doing the health and conflict work, and I just begged him to take me on to coordinate a project that he was running, because I always wanted to work in peace building. Mm-hmm. And that turned into teaching, and I do like teaching. What I don't like about academia is the classic rigor of big universities that only focus on publishing. I want to do. So I consider myself a pracademic. I practice and I teach. Nice. It's just got a bit tedious. Look, we kept Football United at the University of New South Wales for a practical reason, because I could run it, because the university really embraced the idea. And therefore, I didn't have to find a salary for myself. So all the funding we raised could go to the program. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to impact people. Don't get me wrong. I just don't like the convoluted writing academic papers and how you have to write things in such a way to get an academic grant. I think you can teach, and I think you can share learning in a way which is a little bit easier to do and digest. But it's a great place to be, mm-hmm. because you can touch lots of lives. I'm now doing that in peripheral, and I'm focusing on Football United full steam ahead. Within the system, I kind of think I'm a thorn in the system side because I think I haven't yet been able to make the full advocacy impact to get where I want to see things. Maybe because I'm a big picture person and I'm a strategy person, and the little steps are very tedious, and I don't like tedium is one of those things that I avoid because I need to keep moving. So I think I'm a thorn in the side. I'm a thorn sometimes even in my own staff side. I want things to happen, and I don't want no to be my answer. So I'll just keep going. So I think I probably always will be a thorn in the system side. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't mind it if somebody said, okay, come on. Barrett Jiglin would never, because she's not. Anyway, if some government decision maker said, okay, what do we need to do?
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind having a role where I would be advising and trying to make things happen within the system. I'm not going to go beg for that to happen, and they're not going to find me. So probably I'll just keep trying to nudge things within the system from the outside.
Yeah, you definitely
make a lot of noise, bother a lot of people. The cool thing is, I love networking, not for building myself a pinnacle of people I know, but for me reaching people like you that are doing things, putting people together, connecting. So I think that's another thing I see myself doing, is just a consummate connector for what the connections will bring to the world.
Well, that's very much systems leadership, and knowing you as I do, you are a disruptor and a bit of an outlier. And I think, keep questioning and, keep being that thorn in the side, because I think that's how change happens, doesn't it? We can't just keep doing the same thing and expecting the same results. So it's really, really exciting to hear about your work, Anne, and I can't wait for the Myanmar Football for Peace Festival coming up shortly. So hopefully I'll be bringing along a team as well, which I haven't told you about yet.
So. And families. Yeah. Make sure everybody knows to bring their families. We want it to be a celebration of these beautiful people.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Speaking of systems and speaking of bringing people together, Women's World Cup 23. It's going to be amazing. Australia's going to do an amazing World Cup, and Football United and Street Football World and partners have a huge, cool project that we want to launch later this year, reaching out across Australia and New Zealand communities to share what Football for Good is, and then bringing international and Australian and New Zealand youth together on a humongous festival for good in 23 during the World Cup. So maybe we can have another one when we get that launched and share people. I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, I think it's about timing, isn't it? And if you think about the growth of women and girls sport, and to have that World Cup here, I think, it's going to be huge. So definitely the place to be in 2023. So, well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to speak to you, Anne. And just wanted to wish you all the best for the rest of the year, and hope to see you in person soon.
Thank you for the opportunity. As you can tell, I love talking about this stuff. So every time I get to share, it feels good.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, I'll see you soon, Anne.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye.